Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Shadows of the Lost. Episode 3. Chapter 14. Very well, if you so wish to see him. Cover her eyes. He finally commanded, his cold eyes almost biting into my skin. I would obey. The main thing was that I needed to buy Alejandro time. Was Katalia okay? I will allow you to blindfold my eyes, but can I see my daughter first? I asked, trying to sound emotionless despite the worry eating me inside. He smirked. You don't make the rules here. I'm only asking to see my daughter first. I growled venomously. Just one look to make sure she's okay. He fell silent, mind-linking someone before his sharp gaze turned to me. My aura was still around me, but I couldn't keep it up. If I was to save Katalia, I needed all my energy level, which was already dropping. You are in no position to ask for anything, remember that. He spat icily. Fine. I clenched my jaw, but I didn't want to do something so reckless that they did something to Katalia. I just hoped Alejandro would get here soon. I would need to buy enough time until then. Goddess, please give me the strength. I stayed silent, allowing them to blindfold my eyes. I felt a sharp object push against the barrier between my shoulder blades, prodding me forward. Walk. I didn't reply, thinking I had spent years of my life fighting blindly in the dark with a blindfold. Despite my strength, I lacked night vision, which was the price for my healing. Many didn't know I couldn't see in the dark, but it became my advantage over many others. The rest of my senses were heightened and advanced, so I could walk and maneuver efficiently. Os wolves thought I would listen to everything they said and follow them quietly and silently, then yes, I would for now. However, I would need to find Katalia and run if things went south. The house was not that big, I could locate her. If worst came to worse, I would do what I could, even if I could get her out. I felt the sun's warmth vanish from my back, and the dirt of the ground became hard beneath my feet the moment we stepped inside. It was cold, and something told me despite the house smelling of expensive wood and a spiced scent, it was a house with a dark interior. The dark windows had given that away to start with. We walked along the hall. The floors, maybe marble or stone, were paved. Our footsteps echoed off the walls. We slowed down, and suddenly, all my sense of scent vanished. Even the ashy, smoky smell of the wolves around me just disappeared. Anti-scent spray? Were they being careful? Probably so. I didn't pick up the scent of the Crimson King or whatever he called himself. What exactly was his link to us? What did he want from Alejandro? I'm sure that's who he meant by the beast. Sit. I was told. They pushed me forward until my leg hit a chair. I reached out, feeling the item against my back prod harder, before I sat down, keeping my aura around me as a shield. The room fell silent. I was about to speak when I heard the echoing sound of footsteps approaching. I kept my heartbeat steady, feeling the aura of the man coming. He was indeed powerful, maybe not on par with Alejandro or Liam, but powerful enough to be on par with Dad. So, we have the Queen here. He hissed venomously, and even though his voice was emotionless, it was cold and full of hatred. I heard him take a seat, The chair creaked a little under his weight. The urge to rip off the blindfold and look at this man was strong, but I remained unmoving. Buying time was the primary goal. And we have someone who kidnaps children. I replied calmly. Women should know when to hold their tongue. Well, I am not one of your women for you to command as you wish. My voice was calm despite how much hatred I felt for him. A sadistic chuckle left his lips, and I frowned. A woman of strong will, I'm surprised the Lecan allows you to be so disrespectful. If you were mine, I would break you into submission. I clenched my jaw, feeling his gaze roam over me. My stomach twisted with disgust. I'm not yours. I didn't say it out loud, not wanting to trigger him. You said there was a debt owed to you. What exactly do you want from us? The debt must be paid in full, but I won't talk business with a woman. His arrogant, disgusting attitude was irking me, but I was in his hold. His opinion on women was nothing more than dirt beneath his feet. Then, allow me to see my daughter while you do your business. He scoffed maliciously. And you think I will just bend to your wishes? He mocked in his accented voice. We will give you what you want, but I have come here and you won't be leaving. He cut in. You will be going to this property with the dead body of that pup. My eyes flashed as anger flared through me. I ripped the bandage off before any of the men could move, my aura spreading around me and my eyes meeting the ones of the man before me. He was not what I was expecting, he looked far more unhinged than I could have imagined, and something told me he wasn't someone I could ever reason with. His reddish-brown eyes burned into mine as his dark hair fell over one eye. His skin, from the side of his face to his cheek, neck, hands, and arms, was all melted and burned, a burn that stretched every time he moved. He raised his hand ever so slightly, barely lifting his fingertips from the table, warning the men to let me be. You have a problem with us, take it out on us. When Alejandro comes for you, and he will, you will regret this. I hissed coldly. Oh? Who says he will manage to find this place? He smirked, making my stomach twist. What do you mean? We saw you approaching hours ago and allowed you to enter this place. Do you think that feeling you had was purely your intuition, dear blessed wolf? His sneer grew, stretching the burnt skin in the process, making him look even more sinister. I frowned, praying that Alejandro at least got the signal. I have far more power than you can ever imagine. It seems like the beautiful Luna didn't expect that. His gaze trailed over me, and I clenched my jaw. Fine, you got me as you wanted. Where's my daughter? I asked. He ignored me and stood up, striding towards me. He was tall, and his aura surrounded him like a sickening plague. The closer he got, the stronger it seemed to grow. He tilted his head, his leering gaze falling to my lips. The Lecan's maid is indeed beautiful. No wonder he treats you ever so highly. It's either that, or he is far more pathetic than I'd heard. There were 5 of us in this room. Should I risk it? I wasn't sure I'd be able to if that other entity returned. He's a man you can only ever wish to be. I replied, smirking coldly. His gaze snapped up, leering at me. Don't think that pretty moonfire aura will protect you. He suddenly grabbed my neck. My eyes widened in shock as he didn't seem to have any issue penetrating my atmosphere. The darkness I felt earlier was wrapped around him as he squeezed my neck. No one is more powerful than one, not you or your leakin. I grabbed his hand, trying to loosen his hold, but the force behind it was suffocating me. The same pain erupted through me, it felt like my entire body was on fire. What would you give to have your useless pup back in your arms? He was grinning sadistically as if seeing me in pain was entertaining. I would have her back in my arms soon. I promise you, my angel, I am coming. I guess for him, it was, but if he thought I'd go down without a fight, he sure had another thing coming. Summoning all my energy, I grabbed his hand again, gritting my teeth as my hand burned from the touch and lifting my leg, kneeing him straight in the crotch. His grip loosened, he had not been expecting that. Alpha. What's the matter? Need your men to help you fight against a woman? I hissed, aiming another swing at him. He blocked, spun around, and twisted my arm behind my back in a flash. The sickening crunch as he broke my arm and dislocated my shoulder sent me another searing spasm of pain. I don't need anyone to help me to defeat the likes of you. His evil voice came, his men hesitating from helping. This was about his ego, and I knew he wouldn't allow them to help. Plus as I wanted. But you use your jinn, though, despite thinking you're all-powerful without it. I taunted as I made use of my already broken shoulder to rip free from his hold and aimed a kick to his flank, putting all my force into it, followed by a blast of my aura. Despite the fact I was managing, everywhere his hand touched me burned as if hot oil had been poured onto me. Searing my skin, almost as if it was peeling the top layer off. I continued attacking him, throwing kicks and punches as I tried to get the opening that I needed to rip his head right off, but he was guarded, and I saw no weak points. I am no fool to fall for your words and rage. I have power, but I paid a price for that power. I gained that power. No one can do as I did. I attained what I wanted. He hissed. You disrespected me, and so you shall pay. This was not how I wanted this to go, I needed to find Katalia. Alpha. The Leakin is approaching with a powerful witch and an army. I felt him tense, but not fear was in him, it was just as if he was simply calculating the best course of action to take. My heart was pounding at the thought that Alejandro was close. Katalia would be saved. We won't face them now. I heard him thunder just as that ominous aura filled the room. My head felt like it was being split open, like claws were digging into my head. Alejandro. I knew he couldn't hear me, but would he feel this pain? Would he know that something was wrong? My aura was depleting fast. I barely managed to hold him at bay. As I stared blurrily at the man before me, I fell to my knees as blood dripped down my face. I didn't know how long I could hold on. I did my best to stop him from ripping my head open. Leave, he growled to his men. The claws sank deeper into my skull, and a scream tore from my lips as that dark, ominous aura grew. For a second, I felt as if there was something else before me, something made of pure fire, the body doubling around the alpha before me. Burning red. Crimson. He looked like he was on fire. The power and darkness oozing from him. I felt something inside my head, something was wrong. She has been touched, when he spoke, it wasn't his own. This voice alone made me feel worse, dark, sickening, and evil. Something that was not for the mortal ear to hear. Just when I felt like I couldn't hold on any longer, he stepped away, smirking as if he had gained a victory. Glancing towards the window, he left the room swiftly, leaving me in the middle of the office, bleeding onto the woven rug on the ground. I kept my aura up in case he returned and tried to kill me completely, knowing I needed to find Katalia before they took her. I couldn't get up, but I crawled to the door. Using all my strength, I snapped my shoulder back into place, groaning due to the pain. My head was burning with agony. Blood coated my light brown locks. I needed to find my baby girl. The smell of fire filled my nose, and I froze. The vision I had after seeing the first letter returned to me in full force. Had that been a premonition? Goddess, please, no. Katalia. I grabbed the door handle, pushing my body to my feet. I didn't know how to manage, but my only thought was my baby girl. Where do I look? The fire was enveloping the entire building. Think Kiera. Where would you keep a prisoner? The basement or attic? I looked up at the ceiling that was entirely on fire. I wasn't sure if the fire was real or if this was an illusion, but either way, it was hot, destroying the house. Katalia, I staggered through the burning flames. I'll look in the basement first, then head upstairs. I rounded a corner when suddenly a sob reached my ears. A voice that I yearned to hear. My heart leaped like an eagle taking to the sky. Relief and happiness flooded me. Mama! Baby! I looked around frantically, spotting her standing at the far end of the hall. Tears streamed down her cheeks, large eyes full of sadness, and a few bruises on her face only made my anger rise. Her dress was dirty and torn, as the flames were beginning to touch her. Yet when she didn't flinch, I realized that magic created these. My angel was immune to magic. Katalia. I stumbled over to her, pulling her into my arms, swatting away the fire that had caught her dress. I was kissing her on her head, shoulders, and face. Baby, I cupped her face, looking at the bruises on her body. How could they? I'm okay, Mama. Let's go, you're hurt. She whimpered, looking at me. I didn't care if I was hurt, seeing her safe relieved me. With renewed energy, I wrapped my hand around her small one, kissing it as tears filled my eyes. My baby was okay. I'm okay, Mama. She whispered, brushing blood and tears from my cheek. Holding her hand firmly, I nodded, turned, and hurried down the hall. I just needed to get her out of here. The windows were all barred from the inside. I don't think I'll be able to break them. We were almost at the door when the roof caved. I wrapped my arms around Katalia. She may be immune to magic, but she was not resistant to a ton of wood falling on her. Her scream pierced the air as one of the wooden beams fell on top of us. I kept my back arched, shielding her beneath me. Go outside, Katalia. I whispered, feeling my vision darken. No, Mama. Baby, now. I commanded, praying she listened. She looked down at me. I could see the tears streaming down her dirty face before I was pulled into the abyss of darkness, and my world went dark. I was waiting for Kiera to show up when I heard my phone beep and knew it was her by the notification tone. I looked down at my phone, frowning when I clicked on the message. Reading her statement, I opened the map, zooming in on her shared location. I texted her quickly, waiting for her reply before mind-linking the others. I needed to get to her place now. Get everyone close enough to the area I'm forwarding now, head here, and wait for my arrival. I delivered the message before shifting and running off towards the site. I hadn't gotten far when pain wrapped around me, and I gripped my throat. My eyes were blazing red as my aura raged around me. Kiera was hurt. Kiera's in danger. 8 miles northeast of Oxford. Move. I growled through the link. Hold on, amor mio. I'm coming. I had 1,000 questions running through my mind. The pain in my body lingered, meaning she was injured. Did she find something? The guilt that the last time we talked, we had argued rushed through me. I regretted it. I'm coming, amor mio, and I'm going to kill the one who hurt you. Drake, I need a witch. Can you find out if Rehana can port over to me? I need her for barriers. I'm not risking her like Del. Understood, Alpha. Silence fell before Drake's mind linked me again after a short while. Alpha, Luna Rehana said she didn't need the disclaimer, and she'll see you in a few. I was sure Rehana probably said that in a much more colorful manner. I came to a stop. Looking around, it was just open fields for miles. Where was Kiera? I shifted back, scanning the ground as I tried to suppress my aura, not wanting to be discovered. I knew many of my men were approaching, those in this area would be here soon. I kept to the trees despite them being pretty scarce. I could see some country homes, so I walked forward, trying to find the exact location. We were close. But where was she? I felt the presence of a witch behind me, her scent hitting me, and I knew before I even turned that Rehana had ported. She was dressed in a mini dress that I wouldn't call a dress and ridiculously high heels. I'm here. Yet, looking like a flamingo. What are you? A neon light to give away our location. Oh, I know I'm glowing, thanks. But I mean, I think everyone will notice a pink flamingo compared to the terrifying furry beast standing by her side, right? She smirked at me, twirling a strand of her hair. I gave her a withering glare. I'm not even in Leakin form. You were. Anyway, I can lower the illusion. Don't push against it, I don't want you messing with a jinn's power. I warned. I knew what the witches had said would happen if it was anyone other than Del that had tried that spell. They would have been dead. Don't worry, Del used a spell to withdraw the poison from Dante's body. I won't be doing that, I'll just be breaking something. She said quietly, as if she knew what was on my mind. I gave a curt nod as more of our men, including Elijah and Damon, reached us. Rehana took a deep breath, ready to cast the spell. Take it easy. I warned her. Just make it visible, I'll break through myself. She gave me a small smile. Relax, I'll be fine. I didn't reply, but I wouldn't risk her life. Just how I was worried about the two who were inside this place. I hoped that Katalia was here. One needed them safe. She chanted a spell, and after a few moments, it was as if an entire veil was being lifted from our eyes. A vast country house surrounded by tall black gates topped with spikes appeared. I could see the haze-like shield around it, but it didn't feel like everyday magic, uncle. Be careful. Whatever that is, it's dark, I've got this. Liam's voice came from behind us. I turned as Liam and Rayhan appeared, both in sweatpants, and clearly, they had run fast. Rayhan crossed her arms, and I glared at a few male wolves, daring them to look at her. I glanced ahead, hoping Kiera was okay. The pain I felt was still there, and the worry that gnawed inside me kept me on edge. Liam's aura surged around him as he strode towards the barrier. Like Kiera's purple one, his was blue, like flames reaching the sky. His magnetic blue eyes looked almost shimmery. The moment he barreled into the wall, Rayhana whispered a spell, a dazzling bolt of fire heading straight above Liam's head and hitting the shield. The impact of both forces made the barrier flash and tremble. I glared at her for disobeying me. Did these women not know how to obey orders? Once more, Rayhana. Rayhan commanded, his sharp eyes on the barrier. And this time, we just push through. I said, shifting and letting out a menacing growl as Rayhana and Liam struck the fence again. I saw the thin crack appear and charged forward, ramming straight into the wall. Burning heat, that's what it felt like. My entire body was on fire. I exhaled when we penetrated through, followed by Liam, Rayhan, and the rest as the barrier disappeared. Rayhana, stay with me. It was the last thing I heard Elijah say before wolves' growls filled the air from both sides. But theirs were running away, save a few who came to meet us head-on. Seeing every wolf the same color was odd, as if they were all the same, from their scent to their size and the color of their eyes. I frowned, seeing the haze surrounding the house's far side as if masking something ahead. Was that here? Suddenly, the entire house went up in flames. Kiera and Kot. Follow the wolves, I'm going to find Kiera. I shouted through the link to my men and the alphas present. Hopefully, my baby girl was here. I just hope so. I ran ahead. As much as I wanted to rip the bastard behind this, I needed to find my girls first. I just prayed that no one slipped out of my hold this time. Ask Rayhana if she can do anything to ensure they don't take Kot or Kiera. I told my men, hoping whoever was closest to her would pass the message. She's casting a blood cage, anyone from the Rossi bloodline won't be able to leave the premises, just in case they try to take Katalia. There's nothing she can do about Kiera. That's fine. I'd find them. Kiera. I called through the link. I ripped the front doors off the hinges, walking straight into the blazing fire. Daddy. My heart skipped a beat as my eyes fell on my little girl, my emotions overwhelming me for a second. Thank she was alive, despite the bruises on her face, she was alive. What had she been through? Despite that thought eating up at me, I was so relieved to have finally found her. I frowned, realizing she was trying to tug something from the ground. My stomach twisted as I realized it was Kiera's arm. She was stuck under a beam that was on fire. I was in front of them in a flash, pulling the shaft off her. But the sight before me was not one I was expecting, nor one I ever wanted to see. Her forehead along her hairline was cut, blood seeping out of the Her hair was full of blood as if someone had tried to carve the top of her skull right off. "Mama's hurt." Kat whimpered as I wrapped my arm around her. Unable to reply in Leakin form, I lifted Kiera tenderly into my arms. "My queen." Slowly wrapping my arm around her tightly, I didn't want to shake her too much, she was clearly in bad shape. Her heartbeat was faint, too. With the other, I lifted Katalia, tucking her against my chest, shielding her from the flames. Safe. They were going to be okay. I would never let this happen again, and whoever was behind this would surely pay. I jumped back as a massive chunk of the house caved before climbing over it and getting out of this place. Once upon a time, I would have had the enemy in my hands right now, but now I had a family that came first, one I needed to ensure would be safe. I looked around, scanning the grounds. There weren't many of the enemy wolves left. I saw Liam tear the head of one right off before his gaze snapped to me, falling on his sister. He'd have my back. His grey wolf lowered his head to me, and I ran through the remainder of the enemies and the fire that had spread out into the grounds, spotting Rehana quickly in her disturbingly pink clothes as she blasted wolves away, killing a few as she stood there, her power rising behind her. I shifted when I was close to her, looking for a place to place Kiera down safely. "Rehana." She turned, her black hair blowing in her face. She ran over as I placed Kiera gently on the floor behind a tree, away from the chaos. My gaze fell to the side of her neck. It looked like someone had tried to cut open her skull. I didn't let go of Katalia, making sure she didn't look at Kiera as Rehana crouched down by Kiera. "Goddess," she murmured in horror. "Move away." Despite not wanting to let go of Kiera, I knew I had to. I crouched down, my arms around our little girl, pressing my lips to Kiera's softly. Intense sparks coursed through me, reassuring me that she was okay, and I forced myself away. We couldn't waste time. "Is Mama going to be okay?" Katalia whimpered. I nodded, kissing her forehead. She is going to be just fine, you all are." I looked down at her, brushing her hair off her face. I was so glad she was okay. We just needed to find the answers for Dante and Del. I knew we were on a short schedule, but at least we were together. I hugged her tightly, and she wrapped her arms around me as she sobbed into my shoulder. I caressed her hair, inhaling her soft scent. My anger grew when I saw the bruises on her arms. "I got you, Angel, no one's going to touch you again." I growled venomously. "Keep one or two of those alive, knock them unconscious, I want them for questioning." I commanded through the link. I watched Rehana heal Kiera. It was clear that it was taking longer than usual. Rehana was brushing the sweat from her brow, and I could see the wound along Kiera's neck healing exceptionally slowly. I frowned, now taking in the rest of her injuries. There were marks around her neck, a clear handprint with long fingers imprinted around her neck. I clenched my jaw. "Oh, when I find you all, even hell will seem like heaven when I'm done, Daddy, will Enrique be okay?" Katalia brought me out of my thoughts, and one furrowed my brow. "Enrique?" She looked up at me, and I brushed her tears away. I hated my baby girl crying, and I didn't even know the extent of what she had been through yet. "Yes, the horrible Alpha's son, Enrique, was friendly to me. She whispered, now staring at the burning house. I looked at her sharply. She had seen the head. His father probably took him. I said coldly. He had a son, yet he could harm other pups. But Daddy, he hurt him too. She whispered, the anguish in her eyes, and how she said, he hurt him too. Number, what had that thing done to my daughter? And his son? He was a sick bastard who needed to be castrated and skinned alive, then doused in wolfsbane. I'm sure he'll be okay, I said quietly. Seeing the sadness in Katalia's eyes, I sighed. When I find him, I'll ensure the kid is okay. How old was he? I don't know, Daddy. He looked a little older than Dante, she said sadly, resting her head on my shoulder. Who was this guy, and where did he come from? The fight was over. We had 2 enemy wolves in our hold, and a few of my men had gone to see if they could find out where the rest had escaped to, but it seemed magic, or whatever you call that Jinn could do, was at work. They had vanished. I turned my attention back to Kiera, wanting to go over to her but staying patient as Rehana did what she needed to. The blood slowed when she finally sat back, yet the cut remained. Sorry, Uncle, it's the best I can do, Rehana whispered, and I realized she was shaking. We'll get her home. You okay? I asked. She nodded as Rehan came over to support his sister while I looked down at my mate. Amor mio. You should have waited outside of the territory for me. I placed Katalia down, lifting my mate into my arms before scooping Katalia back up. Elijah was by my side, adjusting some basketball shorts as he looked at his daughter and granddaughter. Come on, Katalia, I'll carry you, okay? Okay, Grandpapa, she whispered, holding her arms out to him. He smiled, taking her from me, and although I didn't want to let her go, I knew she was safe with him. He kissed her forehead and cheek, giving her a small smile. Despite his gaze flickering to Kiera, he kept his emotions under control. I knew he wanted to ask about her, to know what happened, but even I didn't know, and I don't think stressing Katalia out with all the questions would be a wise move. I want Squad 7 and 11 of my pack to stay behind and scour this area, see if there's anything you can find here, and put that fire out. There might be some clues inside. As for the rest of the alphas who have helped, I'm grateful for it. Let's move out. The rest obeyed my command. I looked down at the woman in my arms. Her heart was steady now, and I could tell she was simply asleep, but I couldn't wait for her to be fully healed and back to her usual self. The so-called Crimson King had issues with me, yet it felt like he was playing a game, one that he was drawing out purposely. I would not let him pull me into this cat and mouse game of his. If he wanted to play a proper match, then it was high time he learned how it felt to be the hunted. The sun was setting through the window, casting red and orange hues around the room. As much as I wanted to be by Kiera's side, I was doing what I knew she'd like me to, be there for our pups. How are you feeling? I asked, sitting on the sofa in the living room next to Dante, who was leaning back against the cushions, clearly exhausted. I'm lovely, Dad, he replied, despite the red pulsing veins that covered his body. Yeah? Glad to hear you're not a wuss, but you know it's okay to say if hurts. I remarked lightly, reaching over and ruffling his hair. He gave me a smirk. Obviously, but I'm lovely. I'm glad Kat's back. He added, frowning slightly as he looked at Skyla, who was setting up the dollhouse for when Katalia returned from her bath. Scarlet was showering her. We had been back an hour or so. After the doctor checked her over and noted her injuries, she had fallen asleep and had only woken up a short while ago. I was still to look at those reports, knowing they wouldn't be easy to see. I knew I was delaying it, trying to build the courage to face them. Skyla had been on edge, wanting to see her twin. From the moment we had entered, she had been beyond ecstatic. Currently, Elijah was here, as was their pup, Azura. Rayhan had taken Dulsanra and headed home. I was grateful for all his help. Everyone else had also returned home, apart from those working on finding him. I knew Kiera had seen him and caught, but I would not question her, not when I learned that experience was traumatic for her. Rayhana did say she'd stop by if I needed her to so we could probe Kat's mind, but I wasn't sure yet. She had managed to heal the most severe of her injuries before leaving. Guilt still consumed me. I was the reason this happened. On top of that, Kiera had found her at the expense of her safety. I hated that I had failed my pups and queen. So, Dad, we are getting pizza. Azura's voice broke me out of my thoughts, and I removed my hand resting on Dante's head. Are we? Elijah asked her, raising one of his brows from where he stood by the window, busy on his phone. I knew he was handling the search for now, telling me to take a break, not that he took a break himself. Aren't we? I glanced at her, her eyes too suspiciously wide as she stared at her dad, looking like a puppy. Azura Rain Westwood may be known to the world as Elijah and Scarlet's daughter now, but she was the daughter of Indigo, Scarlet's biological sister, one who died 8 years ago. The pup would have almost killed if one of their relatives with witch heritage hadn't performed a spell, sacrificing her own life to place the unborn dog into Scarlet's womb. Indigo had been mated to a man from my pack, one fiercely loyal and efficient, yet he had been abusive, right under my nose, and I had missed it. Yet, I knew he was a show, but Indigo still refused to leave him, but I had forgotten all the abuse. It had reduced Indigo to a shell of the woman she had once been. Looking at her daughter, I saw the same fire in her that the young Indigo once had, and I hoped it remained. Indigo had always had Elijah wrapped around her finger from when she was a pup, and her daughter sure was the same. I'll order it. He finished. I didn't miss her victorious smile as she winked at Skyla. Right, so Lucifer incarnate had a say. Speaking of, she turned to me, giving me a devilish smile. Is everything okay, Daddy? One yet, sure is. Scarlet entered with my little girl looking normal, not a bruise or a speck of dirt on her, but we all know the unseen effects remain. Katalia. Look what I set up. Skyla pointed to the dollhouse, brushing her hair back from her face. She usually didn't play with dolls often. Everyone knew this was an act of kindness towards her sister. Katalia smiled as Azura jumped up. Come on, Kat, let's play. She stated, confidently walking over to my pup and taking her hand. Girls are so loud. Dante added, shaking his head. Dante, be nice because I'm trying to be excellent. Skyla shot back, narrowing her eyes. Play friendly, Children, so I heard we are having pizza. Scarlett raised an eyebrow, walking over to Elijah and tugging him down for a kiss. I stood up. Mind staying with the pups? I'm going to have a smoke, I remarked. She nodded, although the look in her eyes was almost as if she knew where I wanted to go, or more like needed to. Kiera was my real addiction, and I needed her to feel sane. The guilt inside me was only growing, and I needed a dose of Kiera before I saw my princess medical report. I walked through the hall and up the stairs, heading to my bedroom. I opened the door, her scent hitting me like a strong dose of nicotine. Serena and Kevin were both in the room. Alpha, Kevin said, politely lowering his head. I gave a curt nod before looking at Kiera. Excuse us, Serena murmured as they left the room, the door shutting behind them with a click. I looked down at Kiera. The clear cut along her head was still vivid, although the blood had stopped flowing. The blanket was draped over her, pulled up to her chest, her plump, kissable lips slightly parted. I walked over to her and sat down on the bed. Amor mio, I ran my hand tenderly through her hair, making sure not to pull at it. Despite it being cleaned up, there were still traces of dry blood that remained, making her hair stick together. The sparks of the bond danced along my hand and arm. I closed my eyes, inhaling her intoxicating scent that overpowered the distinct smell of whatever the doctor had used to clean her wounds. You found her, protected her, and I didn't even get there in time to protect you, I murmured. I know she won't blame me, and I was still annoyed that she went alone, but I also knew she was the one who had found her, the reason our angel was back with us, and that she was capable. But still, pretty useless, that's how I felt. I couldn't even protect my family. On top of that, times had changed. There was a time I would have found the bastard behind this and killed him slowly and painfully. I would have kept going, not caring for anything but to reach my goal. But now I had priorities and responsibilities to make sure my family was safe, and as much as I wanted to get out there and find him, I couldn't go and leave any of them behind. Kiera in this state, although the doctor said she'd be awake soon, Dante caught, even Sky, who, although she was acting like she was okay, was affected by everything that had happened. I leaned down, a few strands of my hair brushing her face as I touched my forehead to hers ever so lightly, not wanting to hurt her, the sparks between us dancing across my skin. I love you, amor mio, so much. I moved back slightly, my nose brushing hers before I kissed her deeply. Wake up, so I can punish you in the best way for running off. I smirked, running my fingers through my hair, pushing it back, and standing up. Time to see my girl's reports. I walked past the dresser, spotting Kiera's wedding rings. I picked them up and glanced towards the bed, my chest constricting at the memory of how we had parted that day. I placed them down before I left the room, glancing at Kevin and Serena. Keep an eye on her. Yes, Alpha, Kevin replied with a nod. I left the mansion, heading towards headquarters. Callum, meet me at my office, I said through the link to the head doctor. I entered the silent building, although I knew people were in the many different departments doing their duties. I glanced at the guards who stood in position, attentive, alert, and doing their job. Order! I tried to keep it, but when something came, it tore apart everything I had put in place. No matter how much you try, you can never be prepared for everything. A question from earlier replayed in my mind as I thumbed in my passcode and entered my office, leaving the door open. Was Kiera safe, or had she perhaps been cursed? It was a question Elijah had asked, making me think she had been injured just like Dante. But from what Rehana had said, she wasn't sure. She didn't sense anything from her, but I had also refused to allow her to probe too far. This was the problem. I couldn't risk hurting more people no matter how desperately I wanted answers and wanted Kiera safe. Amor mio. I took out a cigarette and lit it just after I heard Callum coming. He was slow. Alpha. He said gravely when he appeared at the door, bowing his head. Skip that. Please show me the report. I cut in, taking a drag on my cigarette. He hesitated before approaching. Alpha, both I and Dr. Jemima were the ones to perform the examinations. The good news is that there were so many signs of abuse, and Dr. Jemima confirmed that. A wave of relief washed over me, but from the look on his face, I knew there was still more. Pass me the file. Do you mind if I explain it? To take a seat, and I don't want or need sugar-coated. I reached over, snatching the file from him, and sat back flipping it open. Several fractures in the ribs, a fractured collarbone, a fracture in her left leg, and both forearms. Her pinky on the right hand had been broken. She had bruised her spine. Some had been partially healed. It seemed she had used her arms to protect herself while being kicked repeatedly. There was a hairline fracture to her skull. It felt like someone was punching me repeatedly in the gut, cutting off my windpipe. I swallowed hard. Leave. Alpha, she will heal, her regeneration gene, I said. Leave. I growled, trying to control my emotions. Alpha. I didn't look up, clenching my jaw and focusing on regulating my erratic heartbeat. The door shut with a click, and I closed my eyes, lowering my head. My daughter had gone through this, all of this. The file felt heavy in my limp hold. No parent would ever want their child to be treated like this. Well, any sane one. My angel had gone through so much at the hands of that bastard. I am going to rip him apart. But it won't change the past. It won't turn back time. It won't take away the pain she had experienced. I had turned my back on her that day. Perhaps this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't. Had I made a mistake? I dropped the file, placing my head in my hands. How do I fix this? Werewolf or not, no child deserves this. I get it now. What a father feels when his child is hurt, or if anyone tries to break them. The unfamiliar sting in my eyes made I take a deep, shuddering breath. Al. A light knock on the door made me quickly wipe my eyes roughly. What do you want? I growled, knowing precisely who was on the other side of the door. He opened the door like he owned the place. Did I permit you to enter? Did I say I needed your consent? I glared coldly at him, who gave me a smirk that held no humor, his cerulean eyes as shadowed as mine. What do you want, Elijah? To see the report. He replied as if that was obvious. Coming over and crouching down, he picked it up off the floor. I stood up, taking a long drag on my cigarette, fighting the agony ripping through me. I walked to the window, staring at the shadows that had settled over the packed grounds. The sun was gone from the sky. Will my family ever be safe? Don't blame yourself for this. I stuck off. I left her that day. He sighed, and I could sense his irritation. Alejandro, you didn't have much of a choice. You made the right choice. Now Katalia is safe and back with us. Yet, but the mental damage of being tortured and abused doesn't go. I could hear the pain in my voice no matter how much I tried to conceal it. No, it doesn't, but with love and care, she will be okay. She's a Rossi of Westwood blood. All we can do is stay strong and continue to be that wall of strength and support for the ones we love. No matter how hard it gets, or how hard that wall is battered on, if we stay strong, then so will they. What do you say to that? He's right, I know he is, but what happens when that shield fails? I allowed her to be taken, you will need to ask her what happened, but perhaps it's better to do that when Kiera is awake. Do it together. He added quietly. Yeah. Well, pizza should be here soon. Return home. I'm sure if Kiera wakes up soon, she will want to see that ugly mug of yours. Yeah? Well, she loves this mug. I shot back. No idea why. He replied, equally arrogant. I could list a few things if you are ready to hear exactly what she loves about it. No thanks. He growled, holding onto the file and opening the office door. I'm sure he got the hint. I pushed past him, smirking slightly. Yeah, if only he knew what his daughter liked about this face, or better, where. My smile faded as I smoked my cigarette. Sometimes, you become friends with the most unexpected of people. Although I was closer to Elijah's age than Kiera's, he was her dad, but he was still my closest confidant after Kiera, the only one who sees the demons I try to hide. We walked in silence through the packed grounds, heading towards my mansion. One day soon, I hope everything is back to normal. Any updates? They are looking for leads on the curse and the witches. The only problem is that Dulsanra is affected. She could have proved vital in finding answers. He spoke after a moment. I frowned. That was true, yeah? Well, we are going to have to find a way to fix that without her, and we will. We returned to the mansion and entered the living room. I looked around at all the kids playing. The three girls sat on the carpet, with Katalia in the center. I could tell by how the girls were fawning over her that she was being taken reasonable care of them. Goddess, even these pups knew when something wasn't right. I sat down next to Dante, running my fingers through his hair and ruffling it up. So, not getting bored, are you? Nope. Besides, I get to watch TV, and there are so many episodes I've been wanting to catch up on, so why not do that now? I haven't got anything better to do anyway. No schoolwork, no training, just chilling. He gave me a grin, but I could tell from his eyes that he wasn't okay. For me, he was trying. This was what I had done. Now my pup, who was only 8 years old, had to pretend that things were okay when they weren't. Yeah. Please make the most of it for now because once you're better, you'll catch up twice. He nodded. The spark in his red eyes returned for a moment, and I promised that I'd make sure he was back to normal soon enough. Whatever this curse was, we will find a way to break it. The doorbell rang, and I knew it was probably one of my men with the pizza. "Daddy, it's the pizza!" exclaimed Azura. These pups sure could eat, and they enjoyed their food. Well, whatever makes them happy with the mood being so down, I'm all for it. I had Clara, one of the 2 Omega housekeepers, answer the door. Moments later, she came to the living room. She knocked lightly on the door before stepping inside. "The food is here. Would you like me to serve you here or in the dining room?" she asked politely. "I think the kids will enjoy eating in the living room for today. What do you guys think?" Scarlet asked with a smile, looking at the girls and Dante. "Who can say no? I would love that," Skyla replied dramatically, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "I'm sure she would. That girl loved to chill. She even said when she grows up, all she will do is relax." When I asked her how she would survive or where she would end up providing for herself, she said that that's what I was there for. She wasn't wrong. As long as I'm alive, this girl can do whatever she wants. Clara placed the pizza boxes on the coffee table, and soon Claire, her twin sister, and the other housekeeper entered. Putting some plates down. "Should I get squash or juices?" Claire asked politely. "Get a mix of fizzy drinks and juices. The kids can have some fun today celebrating Katalia's return, it's only fitting." Scarlet replied with a small smile. "Yes, of course, Luna," Claire replied before she quickly left the room. I leaned over, grabbed one of the plates, and opened the pizza boxes one at a time. "So, tell me, kid, which one do you want?" I asked Dante. "I'll have 2 cheese and tomato pizza slices, Dad." I looked across at him with his head leaning against the sofa. He wasn't his usual self, seeing that straight hurt. The boy could usually have 5 to 6 pizza slices, and now what? He was going to stick to 2. "Do you want some fries or chicken strips?" I asked. He shook his head as I placed the plate in his lap. He picked up his pizza slice slowly, and he clearly didn't have much appetite. "Okay, girls, be careful," Scarlet was saying. I glanced at the girls and saw Katalia was watching me. I motioned for her to come over, holding my hands. She gave me a beautiful smile before she rushed over and climbed into my lap, hugging me tightly. "I'm so happy to be home, Daddy," she whispered, looking into my eyes. I kissed her cheek softly, her soft pure scent soothing as ever mixed with her shampoo. "Yeah. I'm happy that you're home as well, baby girl." She smiled at me, her dark eyes the same color as mine, yet were the entire opposite, full of warmth and innocence. "Do you want your usual? Or do you want to be more adventurous and have some chicken and jalapeno-topped pizza?" I asked. "Oh no, Daddy. I want my usual. I want one giant slice of cheese and tomato pizza with lots and lots of fries, and I like chicken wings." She gave me a huge smile that lit up her face. "How do people hurt children? Do you think this tiny tummy can handle that many fries?" I asked, tickling her. She giggled, writhing in my hold. I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. I sure can. She replied breathlessly. It was good to see her smile. Katalia is a food monster who can eat lots and lots. Instead of making her tummy big and round, her food vanishes into space. Skyla added as she bit into her pizza, topped with a mix of vegetables and chicken. Or what your Auntie Raven used to think was that she had tiny alien-like insects inside her tummy that ate all her food and didn't allow her to grow. Scarlet added. Oh, that's because Raven is short. Azura giggled. I smirked. Yeah, you got that right. I agreed. Mama Red is small, too. Dante added, smiling slightly. I'm 2 inches taller than Raven, though. Scarlet replied, smiling at Dante as she finally finished tending to the other 2 girls and took her large plate to Elijah. She sat down next to him, placing the plate on his thigh. I think when I'm older, I will be the tallest. Skyla finalized with a nod, I think I will be. Azura added with a thoughtful expression. You're pretty small, Sky. I am not. You are, but it doesn't matter, I'll be the tallest of you all since girls are always much more minor. Dante added, mustering up a half-assed smirk. He's right. Elijah added. But we all know that height doesn't matter. Scarlet interceded. But Mama, I heard Raven talking to Taylor, and they said size matters. Azura added. I almost choked on my drink, clearing my throat and smirking as I looked at the couple across from me. Both exchanged looks. Guess size matters, hey. I mocked. Scarlet, who looked shocked, smoothly covered up her surprise and took a bite of her pizza. Well, I'm sure they were talking about something else. Scarlet tried to cover up as Elijah simply shook his head, a slight smirk on his face. No, they were talking about Liam and Zach. Azura frowned. It's okay, I'll ask them when I go back. I don't think Auntie Raven should say size matters when she's so tiny. Skyla giggled. Okay, let's change this topic. Scarlet stated. Yeah, I'm sure no one wants to imagine their son's size. I kept my hand on Katalia's plate as she ate when I noticed something sticking out of her pajama pocket. It was a dark piece of fabric. I reached for it, but she quickly grabbed my hand, to my surprise. That's mine, Daddy! She exclaimed, fear filling her eyes. Instantly, I felt like there was something wrong. Did it have some magic on it or something that she was told to keep close to her? Let me look at it, Angel, I replied quietly, can I have it back after? She asked hesitantly, fat tears beginning to spill down her face. Yeah, I promise. If it's safe. She slowly took it out and clutched it tightly, still unwilling to give it up. Please save him, Daddy. His papa hurt him. She began to sob as Scarlet rushed over, taking the plate from us and crouching down next to me, stroking Katalia's hair. Co, it's okay baby, you can keep it. Who is he? She asked soothingly. That kid she mentioned outside that place, Enrique, he was the bad alpha's son. He gave me food. She began crying uncontrollably, and I hugged her tight as Scarlet rubbed her back, looking upset despite masking it well. There were similarities between her and Kiera, but Scarlet hid her emotions better. Okay, I won't take it from you, it will be okay. I murmured as the two girls exchanged looks, worry and concern, replacing the amusement from earlier. Why would he help you? Dante asked, despite his state. His eyes were sharp as he questioned her. He didn't say. Katalia sobbed. She said earlier when we were there that he was around Dante's age or a bit older. I said quietly to Elijah and Scarlet. Scarlet's eyes were filled with concern and worry. I knew it was for the pup. Katalia may have some answers, but I couldn't ask her. You can't trust the enemy, Kat. Dante said firmly, his eyes cold. But when there was shouting, he was the one who hurried to unlock the basement door. He didn't know the fire can't hurt me. He told me my family had come for me and to go outside quickly. She whimpered. So. This he had helped her, the day he gave me food, his papa found out, and Enrique told him to punish him. The guard at the door said if the young Alpha Prince died, it would be my fault. Then, when he unlocked the basement door, he still could not walk correctly. I saw the marks on his neck, Dante scoffed. Alpha Prince. His father is no king, and nor is he a prince. Dante, I warned. Arrogance and pride were two traits that Dante had, but as much as I agreed with him that the man was no king, I would not allow him to upset Katalia, who had been treated with some humanity by him. Although I didn't like any boy being nice to my girl, I was glad she hadn't been alone. That kid had done more for her than I could have within those walls. Okay, let's finish our pizza and not argue. Elijah said, glancing at the irritated Dante. Dad, we are not arguing, Azura pouted. We are discussing. Don't worry, Kot, we will find your prince, okay? Skyla smirked, winking at her sister, making Dante and I frown. To my surprise, Katalia blushed as she wiped her tears, making Azura giggle. He isn't her prince. I growled. Skyla moved her eyebrow. You can't decide that, Daddy. Besides, now that Cat's home, you owe me 300 pounds. I for swearing. Okay, I do swear, but I have not said the word around her 300 times. I haven't even been around for that long since we got back. Thrifty. Elijah smirked. No, just a thief. I growled as she stuck her tongue out at me cheekily. You ain't getting any money for that. She looked away sullenly after giving me a dirty look as she bit into her pizza viciously. Once dinner was over, the girls played for a while or tried to, but it was clear Katalia was not ready to cheer up, still holding on to the torn piece of fabric. Okay, you two girls must shower and start getting ready for bed. Scarlet ordered. Azura, I am going to check your hair. Make sure you wash it properly, okay? Okay, Mama. She replied with a pout. Daddy, will you tell me a bedtime story? Katalia asked. About a certain Prince Charming. Skyla shimmed before she burst into a fit of giggles. No Prince Charming. I frowned. Why was this girl even talking about boys? They were not to even go there. Like ever. I glared at her and spotted Elijah smirking. What do you want? Just thinking of you in my position, Karma. Don't speak too soon, you have one left. I reminded him. Well, at least there's no more Rossies. Elijah smirked. There is one, Scarlett added with an amused smirk before her smile vanished, and she shook her head, frowning. Far too old. The three of us exchanged looks, clearly disturbed with the direction that went. Yeah, too old, but then again. I was 16 years older than Kiera. Leo. N.A., the goddess isn't that sadistic to play that all over. I glanced at Dante, who was falling asleep holding his can of drink. I took it from him and picked him up. Dad, I can walk. I didn't argue, knowing it was his pride, placing him down as I helped him out of the room, pausing at the door. I'm getting Dante to bed. Have your teeth brushed, and then I'll tell you a story. Oh, Daddy is telling a story for once. Skyla giggled. Yeah, torture, but just seeing them all together was enough. Once Dante had changed and brushed his teeth, I helped him to bed. Elijah would be staying with him for the night. Are the pillows okay? Yeah, Dad, I'm fine. A curse can't do anything to me, he said, quietly staring at the stars projected on his ceiling. But you're still worried about something. I pushed quietly. Well, Dulsanra's also like this because of me. So, does Ray hate me? He asked so quietly that I barely heard. He was clenching his jaw as he tried to remain emotionless. I smirked slightly. Rayhan? Far from it, for a moment, I thought you were worried about Del. I am, but we are both going to be okay. He replied with such conviction that something told me he knew more than he could say. But those words gave me hope. Yeah, there's something we need to do. He smiled at me, looking far older than his years. I frowned, nodding. There were things he said that we didn't understand. Kia and I decided it was best not to push it and just accept what he said and take notes but still treat him like he was just a typical pup. Although he was a mature one. Good. I replied, kissing his forehead. So, want to talk to Rayhan? Not now, he mumbled, looking down at his duvet. All right, when you want to, just say the word, okay? Okay. I tucked him in before I stood up. Night, son. He replied. I smirked. Yeah, that's what I would have usually said. Don't let your mom catch you saying that. I won't. I opened the bedroom door a crack, heading to the twins' room. The door was open, and the three giggling could be heard down the hall. What was with girls? Did they need to giggle 24/7? I knocked lightly on the door. You can come in, you know. Azura's voice came, her sharp blue eyes peering at me through the gap in the door. Don't worry, Mama is dressed. I raised an eyebrow. She knew I knocked because of Scarlett. I opened the door, entering the pale pink, extra girly room that confused me. I can't say only girls love pink, but... yeah, not my color unless so, of course, it's on Kiera. I'm beginning to wonder which is the more giant evil between Skyla and you. Oh, but I'm so innocent. Azura replied, pulling the hood of her unicorn onesie up and blinking those large eyes at me. Yeah, I can see, I don't trust this girl, and unlike Liam, I won't fall for her tricks. Scarlet came out from the arch that led off to the girls' dressing room, play area, and bathroom, holding 2 pink bath towels. Bedtime story time? Hey! Yeah. I looked at the 3 girls who had settled into one bed, looking at me with anticipation. Daddy, you look good in a pink room. Maybe you should wear pink at times. Skyla added. I narrowed my eyes, hearing Scarlet chuckle as she left the room, leaving me with the 3 girls, 2 of who were as devious as devils. You can handle anything, Alejandro. I'm sure one extra child wasn't going to be an issue. The only problem was that she was a Westwood, and I knew that she was not going to make this easy. Apart from Katalia, the other 2 were finding this amusing. I sat on the additional bed, and Skyla giggled when the mattress creaked a little. What was creaking for? I'm sure these things were expensive. You are too big for that bed. Little Miss Obvious stated, tucking her black hair behind her ear. You men must learn to sit on the floor when telling stories. Yeah, is that where you get Elle and Liam sitting? She smiled innocently. We Westwoods don't sit on the floor. Skyla cackled like a witch. Burn Daddy, she's saying Westwoods are better than Rossi's. Yeah, well, I don't think so. Now zip those mouths or no story. I growled. I am not going to argue with an 8-year-old brat. Oh. So are you better than Kiera? The sassy little devil pushed. I narrowed my eyes. She's a Rossi now. Not by blood. She smirked. Daddy, you are amazing. You don't need anyone telling you that. Katalia piped in gently. Okay, now, was my daughter trying to make me feel better? Nothing this little thing says bothers me. I growled. Azura blinked back as if she had no clue what I meant and shrugged. Oops, sorry Alejandro. She said, blinking. I exhaled, running a hand down my face. All right, what kind of story do you want to hear? How you and Mama met? Skyla piped in. I'm sure they've heard this 1,000 times. Because I had to censor it, I don't even remember what Kiera or I have told them before, right? So, I was chasing this monster. It led me toward the Bloodstorm-packed territory, and then I saw your mother, this fantastic white wolf with burning purple eyes. So, I killed him and saved Kiera from being killed. Or she could have protected herself. Skyla added. I narrowed my eyes at her as all 3 girls stared at me, waiting for me to continue. Maybe. So anyway, she couldn't see me, but I remember looking into her gorgeous blue-green eyes as she asked me who I was. If so, she shifted back. Azura asked. Yeah, because she was hurt. Oh, my goddess, you saw her. She gasped. Skyla giggled. Doesn't matter. Anyway, Liam, Raven, and some other came, so I left. The next day, I was at Elijah's, and she entered the room, and well, let's say she couldn't keep her eyes off me. I smirked. Dad, you can't keep your eyes off Mom. Skyla remarked, rolling her eyes. Why do men think it's all about them? Trust me, you have no idea how egotistical these alphas are. Azura replied. I exhaled, thinking I needed a drink after this, or make it 10. Mama and Daddy couldn't keep their eyes off each other. Katalia added softly, hugging the plushie she was holding tightly. I didn't miss the fabric she held tightly in her grip and frowned slightly but said nothing. Maybe, then what happened? Azura asked. Then she got angry because I told her dad that she was attacked, so she was annoyed off and came up to my room and barged in. Oh, Skyla said, smirking. Third, what happened, Daddy? Then I told her I'm the king, and I do as I want. I smirked, remembering how I pinned her to the bed that day. She wasn't having it. Then she came over to my pack. I continued telling the very PG-rated version of the story, with Azura sometimes chipping in and Skyla having her fits of laughter. While Katalia listened with a gentle smile on her face. It felt good knowing she was home, now to break the curse on Dante and Alessandra, too. I prayed we would have a solution soon. I continued until the twins fell asleep, but the Westwood Devil remained awake, her creepily unblinking eyes staring at me. And then... There's nothing more to tell, I said, running a hand through my hair. Well, you aren't very good at telling stories, Dad is far better. She stated, snuggling down into the sheets. Yeah, well, he can tell stories next time. Unlike him, I'm not so old that I've got nothing better to do. I replied, standing you up and pulling the duvet over all three. Noticing how Skyla and Katalia held each other's hands in their sleep. This incident would always remain with both of them. Well, you aren't much younger. But don't worry, Katalia will be okay, you can go now. With me here, even the devil himself won't approach. She said yawning. I frowned, if only she realized we were against some devil. Well, night, little brat. That's what they call me when they have no better comebacks, she murmured, turning over. I frowned as I looked at her back, sassy little brat. Shaking my head, I left the room, seeing Elle and Scarlet outside Dante's rooms. Their arms wrapped around one another as they looked into his room. I guess they were going through, too, no matter how much they tried to hide it. These kids were their grandkids and Kiera's parents. I walked down the hall, lighting a cigarette. The girls are asleep, that pup of yours is draining. No wonder you look so old. She sucks the life out of you, I remarked. She is a notch above Kiera as a kid, Elijah smirked. It was then I realized Scarlet's eyes were slightly red. She looked away, smiling faintly, always acting tough. She's entertaining, she replied smoothly as Elijah kissed her, fingering her hair. I could tell they were mind-linking, and Scarlet nodded. I can get someone else to sit with Kiera. If you two want to stay together, I can watch the girls, I said quietly. Although I wanted to be by her side, I was willing to sacrifice my own needs to do what I knew Kiera would want, be there for our pups and her parents. Scarlet shook her head, looking up at me. No, you need to be by her side. I'm wonderful, she whispered, despite her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She reached up, placing a hand on my shoulder. You need the rest, too. I'll fix this, I promised quietly. We will, together, she replied, tiptoeing as she yanked my head down, kissing my cheek. Scarlett and I didn't have a mother and son relationship considering she's far too close to my age. Still, even though there was no name to our relationship, she was Kiera's mother, and that was the most important thing. The frown on Elijah's face told me how jealous he got of anyone Scarlett gave attention to, and I smirked, wrapping my arms around Scarlett. Because who doesn't like to add a little spice to Elijah's irritation? He frowned when Scarlett hugged me back. I gave her a quick squeeze, thinking I knew how she was feeling. Your man's jealous, I remarked, letting go of her. She rolled her eyes. Seriously, of your daughter's mate? She asked him skeptically. I wasn't jealous. He growled, pulling her into his arms and kissing her neck. Possessive? Yet. I smirked, glancing into Dante's room. He was fast asleep, the red veins looking even more prominent as he slept. I re-entered the room, going over to the sleeping boy and slowly taking the necklace that suppressed his powers off. His strong aura filled the room, promising a mighty alpha when the time came. What are you doing? From behind, Elijah asked. He once said he feels like it weighs him down. I know it won't do anything, but at least he can feel a little lighter. I glanced at him, and he nodded, moving back the blanket on the mattress onto the floor before he dropped onto it. Makes sense. I nodded, leaving the room, and quietly shut the door behind me before returning. Kevin and Serena both looked tired yet alert. The empty pizza box on the side told me they had at least had food. Anything? I asked. No. Serena said, sighing. I nodded emotionlessly. Head home, get some rest. She nodded, glancing at Kiera before picking up the empty pizza boxes and the 2 cans. Night, beautiful. Kevin murmured, picking up Kiera's hand and softly kissing it before laying it back on the duvet. He lowered his head to me before he left the room, shutting the door behind him. I locked it before bed. The cut along her forehead was almost gone. Her long lashes touched her face lightly, her plump lips looking as kissable as ever. I took hold of her chin, rubbing my thumb along it while taking a long drag on my cigarette with the other. I missed her. Despite her being right here, missed her voice, touch, and embrace, just her. I turned away from her, trying to calm the overwhelming emotions that threatened to take over, the guilt returning with a vengeance. I stubbed the cigarette, left it in the little ashtray, and headed to the bathroom, placing Dante's necklace in the drawer next to Kiera's rings. Maybe a shower would relieve some of the tension I was feeling? Who was I kidding? Until I found that bastard, killed him, and fixed all this, I couldn't relax. I stripped, got into the shower, and let the water run down my tattooed body. I closed my eyes, bracing my hand on the wall and resting my forehead against the cool tiles. It had been years since that feeling of uselessness and being a failure had returned to me, ever since RAF's death, and now it was back. Maybe I had gotten too soft, sure, I trained a little less directly that I had a family, but if I was going to be at my best, then I needed to become stronger, needed to do better. I had slipped and gotten far too relaxed. I almost punched the wall, controlling myself as I grabbed the shampoo bottle instead. 20 minutes later, I stepped out of the shower, grabbed a towel, and wrapped it around my waist. I returned to the bedroom after brushing my teeth. I walked over to the curtains, shutting them entirely before I grabbed some sweatpants and pulled them on, toweling my hair. I tossed the towel to the ground and walked over to the bed, moving the duvet back, my eyes raking over her luscious curves. She was out cold, or as Reina insisted, simply asleep, and I was still unable to stop myself from checking her out. I got into the bed, gently lifting her head, slid my arm under it, and tugged her close. A soft sigh escaped her, and I smirked, pulling her against me, her body molding against mine perfectly as I kissed her neck softly. The smell of blood and smoke lingered, yet her intoxicating scent overpowered it. I squeezed her before hugging her tightly. "Wake up, amor mio." I couldn't sleep, my mind a storm of emotions and thoughts, wondering if there was any progress about this so-called Crimson King. My only grasp of serenity was the woman in my arms. I wasn't sure when sleep finally came over, but the first rays of dawn had begun to seep through the crack in the curtain. Me. Kiera, Katalia. I jolted upright, looking around in the darkness, panic and fear consuming me. Was she okay? Did she get out safe? Where sparks tingled through me when an arm wrapped around me. "She's safe." Alejandro's soothing voice made my eyes shut in relief. "We're back home, amor mio." I let out a shuddering breath of relief, slumping against his chest, my heart pounding rapidly as I clutched onto his arm. Thank the goddess for that. I needed to see her. I looked around, wondering what time it was. It was still dark, which meant it was still the middle of the night. Alejandro rubbed my back soothingly and I turned in his hold, feeling so protected in his strong arms. I looked up at him. "I'm glad you got there in time," I whispered, gazing into his glowing red eyes. In this dark room, it was all I could see. "You scared me, amor mio." His husky voice came. "I know." I reached up, cupping his face, the bristles of his stubble prickling my fingertips, a feeling I so loved. "I'm sorry," I whispered, knowing I worried him. "Yet? Well, I'm not letting you off the hook so quickly." His husky reply came, then he was kissing me. Passionately, deeply, hungrily. My entire body hummed at his touch, rivets of pleasure rushing straight to my core. His firm yet soft lips dominated mine completely, his hand gripping the back of my neck, his heart thudding as one with mine. I could barely breathe with the overwhelming emotions and love that I was feeling, his and mine intertwined as one. He was here, Katalia was safe, we were together. The moment he squeezed me, I broke away gasping. As much as I wanted him, and that ache in my core was strong, I needed to see my babies first. "I want to see the kids," I whispered, cupping his face. "Sure." I knew he was smirking from the tone in his voice. I could smell my own arousal clinging in the air. "Light," he said clearly. The lights came on and I looked into the handsome face of my king. I hugged him tightly and he stood up, his hands cupping my thighs. "How do you feel?" "Completely okay, just like I've had a good training session," I replied, frowning as I tried to remember what had happened. All I remembered was pain and fire, then the burning house. "Katalia." I shook my head as he quietly opened the door. "What time is it?" I asked, making him glance over at the clock. Near 3 in the morning. I'll be quick, I whispered. He followed as I first went to the girls' room. Scarlet's with them. I nodded, slowly opening the door. Instantly I heard Mom wake up, her heart rate quickening. Kia. She whispered. Mom. I replied. She switched the lamp on and I saw that Katalia was sleeping in her arms, whilst 2 heads of black hair were on the other bed. I smiled at Mom, who looked so relieved to see me awake. I quickly hurried over to her, hugging her tightly. Thank the goddess! Her hushed voice came, kissing my cheek. I moved back looking at Katalia. Clean, no bruises and seemingly at peace. I crouched down by the bed, running my hand through her hair and kissing her forehead softly, closing my eyes as I rested my head against hers. She was safe. She was home. Goddess, thank you. How has she been? She woke up crying a short while ago, so I brought her to my bed. Mom replied, running her hand through my hair. I looked into her soft sage green eyes, knowing she was doing her best to control her emotions. Growing up I often felt like Dad was too protective, and don't get me wrong, he was very overbearing, but when I became a mother, I realized why. The fear of losing a child or of them getting hurt was terrifying. Just the way Mom was relieved that I was okay, I totally understood that. I'm fine, I said softly. She nodded, cupping my face, and I placed my hand over her pale one. Thank you for letting me go, I know it was hard for you too. She didn't reply, nodding. I knew she was trying to control her tears. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. She whispered, wrapping her arms around me once again, a very quiet shuddering sob escaping her. I closed my eyes, my arm around my baby girl and my mother. For a few moments we remained like that, until Mom moved back, wiping her tears. Goddess, Kia, I don't cry. She sniffed lightly. It's okay to at times. I smiled softly before kissing Katalia gently. I want to take her to my room. Mom nodded. I walked over to the other bed, kissing Skyla and Azura tenderly. Azura was a messy sleeper just like Auntie Indigo. Her arms and legs sprawled were all over the place. I tucked her in slowly, careful not to disturb her, and caressed Skyla's hair. She wasn't the type to speak up about things that troubled her. I just hope she'd be okay. We all would need time to heal from this. I stood up. Baby, take Katalia to our room. I mind-linked Alejandro, who was at the door. His sharp piercing eyes met mine, that arrogant pout on his face, and his clenched jaw only adding to how handsome he looked. I knew he wanted me, but he's going to have to wait for tomorrow. I made my way down the hall to Dante's room, whilst Alejandro took Katalia to our room. I opened the door slowly, and as expected Dad was up in a flash, his eyes blazing in the dark. Kiera. Dad. I replied, walking over to him, leaving the hallway door open to cast some light in this dark room. He hugged me tightly and I smiled up at him. How are you feeling? I'm perfectly fine, I replied, pulling away after a moment and going over to Dante. His aura filled the room. Seems like his necklace was removed. His eyes fluttered open, frowning as he looked around before realizing it was me, and a small smile graced his lips. Mama. Baby. I pulled him into my arms, wishing I could do something about those veins that covered his body. "We'll find a way." He hugged me tightly before I moved back and cupped his face, planting a kiss on his forehead. "I missed you," I whispered. "Me too. I'm glad you woke up." I nodded. "Me too." I sat with him for a few moments, settling him back down and promising that we'll talk more in the morning before bidding both him and Dad good night. "To your bedroom," where Katalia was fast asleep in our bed. The lights were on dimly and Alejandro was standing near the window, which was slightly open, smoking a cigarette. My eyes ran over his body, my heart skipping a beat when he glanced at me as I entered, closing the door quietly behind me. I walked over to him, wrapping my arms around his waist, very aware of his manhood against my stomach. "Goddess! Did you see him?" he asked, his eyes hard and cold. I frowned. "Yeah. I did. I remember asking to see the Crimson King. Wasn't I shown into an office?" "Then what?" I placed a hand on my neck and shook my head. "I can't remember," I whispered. His frown deepened, his eyes flashing as he squeezed me. "He probably made sure you didn't remember. Do you remember anything?" I pondered over what happened, but it was just empty. I remember demanding to see him, then walking along the hall, and then I was in a fight, or something happened because I was hurt. I unwrapped my arms from around his waist, pushing my hair back as I turned away. Why couldn't I remember? This was frustrating. They must have done something. "So, they've made sure you forgot everything that you saw or some like that. When I saw you, you were a mess. They did a number on you and looked like they were going to carve your head open." His voice held venom and I placed my hand on his bicep. "I'm fine. Did you come inside or did Katalia go out?" I asked, glancing towards our angel who was sleeping peacefully. "I came in. She was trying to pull you out from under a beam." His arms locked around me from behind, pushing my breasts up as he kissed my neck. I closed my eyes, leaning into him. I'm glad you came." "Yeah? Care to explain why you didn't leave it to me? You snuck out Kiera and it worried me." His voice was quiet, but I could sense his anger and irritation. "I couldn't just sit and do nothing, and you didn't allow me to go. Look, Alejandro, she's home, she's safe. Let's not think about it," I pleaded, tilting my head back to look up at him. "I saw you near death, amor mio. I can't just not think about that. We can't just pretend it never happened." He frowned, but I didn't reply, not wanting to argue. There was nothing I could do about it, and something told me this conversation wasn't over. I understood his concern, but he clearly didn't want to see my point of view. I knew we were going to have to talk about it, but not when Katalia was around. The last thing we needed was for her to see us argue. Despite his anger, his arms remained around me tightly, placing kisses along my neck, yet I could sense his emotions. "Let's get to bed," I said, softly pulling out of his arms. I walked over to the bed and slipped between the sheets, pulling Katalia onto my arm and holding her tightly. I felt the bed dip when he got in. His intoxicating scent made me feel safe, and when he pulled me against him, I closed my eyes, wishing that we managed to sort our issue out soon. "I love you," I murmured through the mind link. "This is never going to change. I love you too." A small smile graced my lips before I fell asleep, once more holding my baby girl close. I won't ever let you go again. Enrique. I stood silently before my father's desk. My face was emotionless, my chin tilted up, and my shoulders back despite the pain that filled my body. He had summoned me, but I wasn't sure why. It couldn't be good. He was still angry at me for giving the chica food. My punishment was carried out daily and I wasn't healing as well anymore. The lack of food and water was slowing me down, but I won't let it show. I was strong, an alpha who could handle anything. I looked at father's back. He was standing behind his chair taking something off the shelf. I could feel his anger, his irritation, and the darkness of his immense power surrounding him. "Padre, you called for me?" I asked after a few minutes. Standing here was unbearable, pain was spreading through my calves and back. Today's punishment had been hard. "How are you finding the new location, my Joe?" I looked around his office. The house was darker than the previous one. When we had come here earlier, all I could think about was if the chica got out. "It's good, Padre." "Is it? What of the other one that burned down to a crisp?" He spun around, his hatred burning in his eyes as he glared at me. I lowered my head. "It was also befitting, Padre," I replied, keeping my head bowed in respect. "You know that girl would have died, but I heard that somehow, the door was unlocked." "Do you know who unlocked the door?" "Danger." I saw the warning signs in his burning eyes as I stayed rooted in my spot. If I lied, I was dead. If I told the truth, then what will happen to me? "Yes, Padre, I do," I replied quietly. "And who unlocked the door? Was it Ronaldo? Maybe I should kill him for disobeying me." "I gave no order to anyone to unlock that door." He dropped into his seat, and I could now see the small thin blade in his hand. "No, Padre, it was I." I swallowed, trying not to show how scared I was. "Then do we kill you, Enrique?" I struggled to voice my thoughts, feeling a strange emotion overcome me. It felt like there was something stuck in my throat and I couldn't speak. I'm sorry, Padre." She was only a chill. A menacing growl echoed around the room and he lunged across the table, grabbing me by my neck. "Who was meant to die?" he growled. "What magic has she done upon you that you have disobeyed me not once but twice?" I couldn't breathe, his grip around my neck was painful. He dragged me across the table, slamming me face forward onto it. "Was this the hand that you used to free her?" He grabbed my right hand, pinning it to the table as I gasped for air, relieved he had let go of my neck. "Padre, please. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." She was only little I screamed in agony and fear. The smell of blood filled the air as I stared in complete horror at my hand, or where my hand once used to be. Father had cut it off completely. "No, Padre." A strangled sob left my lips as I begged him, but it was no use, as my entire hand went up in flames. I stared at my stump numb. My entire life flashing before me. I'll never be able to run in wolf form. I'll never be the best I could be. Reap the repercussion of your actions. Father hissed before he walked out of the office, leaving me behind. I couldn't stop the tears. It was strange to cry. It hurt so much. It hurt physically, but it also hurt inside. I stared at the ashy pile, all that was left of my hand as I fell to my knees, sobbing silently. I felt so broken. Was this the price of kindness? Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.